We'll call the meeting to order. Madam Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Hurst,
Sorry, present.
Attorney Murphy,
Unmute.
Murph? Peter?
There it is.
I'm unmuted. Present.
Ms. Naylor,
Present.
Ms. Gresham,
Present.
Ms. Perez,
Ms. Perez is under the weather. Maria, we hope you're feeling better.
Mr. Collins,
Here.
Mayor Sarno.
Present. Could you all please rise for a moment of silence for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic
and the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, I hope everyone's doing well and your families are doing well, and we appreciate the viewing audience that is here. And we're going to just beware. I think Dan, Superintendent Walker, will report on it. Lawn signs for our graduates. And I know Benny Pavan, our student rep, isn't here, but the Conservatory Arts got a nice award. And
Yeah.
I know you're going to be speaking about that too. So I hope everybody's doing well. We'll now move to Section 2, approval of minutes. Approve the April 9th, 2020 regular school committee meeting minutes. Any questions or comments? Move they be accepted. Motion by Vice Chair Collins, is second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Gresham. Eddie, do we have technical roll calls on these two, on everything now? Because we're on this video type version.
Yes.
Roll calls are required. So Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Hurst,
Yes.
Attorney Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Naylor,
Yes.
Ms. Gresham,
Yes.
Ms. Perez, absent Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mayor Sarno.
For sufficient votes, this matter passes. Thank you. We'll now move to Section 3 voting items. And this is a vote to approve the schematic design submittal for the DeBerry Homer Elementary project and to authorize the project team to submit schematic design related to the Mass School Building Authority, MSBA, for consideration. I just want to give a shout out to School Committee Woman Barbara Gresham. We appreciate all your outreach to the neighborhood areas, much as was done with Maria Perez down in the north end. This is your baby, Barbara, and I appreciate the administration.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
This goes here. So Superintendent Warwick, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Donna Danisco and the team is here to take us through a PowerPoint. Done a great job on the schematic design. We're ready to submit to MSBA. It was due, I believe, it next week. We've gone through Building and Grounds Subcommittee and the School Building Commission. I don't know if you wanted
Vice
to
Chair
comment
Collins.
on it, Vice Chair.
It was just fully recommended. You'll see why when Donna gives us the present.
Outstanding presentation, really well done. Again, this is the same team that did Lincoln and Brightwood for us, and the Central High Edition did a fabulous job on all of those projects. So I'll let Donna and her team take it, but I'm really excited about the proposal.
Donna, before you go on, I want to give a shout out to my city solicitor, my councilor, who really enjoyed. He's now our IT specialist for these meetings. He's done a wonderful job for school committee meetings, city council meetings, board meetings, you name it. He's wearing another hat tonight. So Eddie, as we say in Italian, tante grazie. Thank you very much. Donna, how do you like that? An Italian introduction for you, Donna.
I love it. I love it. All right, I'm going to share my screen, if that's okay. Just let me know if you do not see it. Can everyone see my screen?
No.
No. All right. Oh, sorry. I have to hit the share button. There you go. How's that?
Yep. Perfect.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Thank you, everyone. And it's nice to see you all. We're sorry we can't be with you in person, but the next best thing, right? Tonight, we just want to bring everyone up to speed where we are with the design for the DeBerry and Homer School project. Not much has changed since we've been out before the community several times, and we've just been refining it to reflect the educational components, make sure we have the adjacencies aligned, the integration of the special ed programs, and make sure that it meets all of the Springfield Public Schools requirements. And I'm trying to advance my slide. Sorry. I had to go in the other way. So I'll just quickly take you through the project. As everyone's familiar, this is the existing DeBerry school site with the existing conditions. It's just a broader view. So we have Monroe Street to the north, connecting with Eastern Ave, connecting back with Union Street, and at the corner is Hancock. And this is St. John's Church that we've had many conversations with and will continue to have. We have several residents between the church and the school, and we'll continue to meet and discuss neighborhood concerns going forward. Currently, as we all know, Monroe Street is two ways, as is Eastern. Union is one way, and then connecting with Hancock, which is two ways. The proposed organization of the streets is that we change Monroe Street to a one-way street. This is our recommendation. We haven't had the opportunity to have it finalized, but as of now, our recommendation have Monroe Street one-way. Eastern would remain two-way. Union would remain one-way, going the opposite way, connecting with Hancock Street. So we'll have this circular motion for drop-off and pickup. Parents would drop off along Monroe and buses would drop off along Union Street. What we have done to widen Monroe Street is we have taken a part of our parcel and site and have created a drop-off lane within our property line so that parents can pull off and live drop off and pick up so that we can maintain the 24-foot width along Monroe Street. Coming down Union Street, it will be the same pattern, but we've created a larger drop-off area for buses. So again, having the buses get off the streets to allow traffic to pass by, that will have sufficient time for drop-off and pickup of students without interfering with traffic. The existing school is going to be very close to where we'll be constructing the new school. We'll have all of the proper requirements for fencing and separation of the current school functions and the construction. But once the existing school is demolished, we also have another access drop-off area for special ed buses and vans so that those students can take their time with the drop-off and pickup procedures. What we have, this is the Homer School, and within the Homer School we have the PLC low incidence program, and we strategically located it in this area of the building so that those students needing extra time can come in through this entry and go right to their classroom. So we felt that was an important consideration. Other site aspects are each school. This will be the Homer, this will be the DeBerry, will have their own park, their own playground areas, all fenced off, and we'll have smaller pre-kindergarten playgrounds as well for each school, also separated. We have some garden spaces that we'll continue to refine within the site as well. Each school will have its own identity and drop-off, and you'll see that with some of the aerial views that we have to show later, but each school will have its drop-off for students coming off buses in the front, and then along Monroe Street, as parents are dropping off, each school will have its own drop-off. The DeBerry students would enter in this location, and the Homer students will be dropped off in this location. We've also been able to have some handicap parking in the front of the school, as well as some visitor parking. So once school is in session, they'll be able to have some parking in the front and just go directly into the schools. Once the new school is completed, the students from the DeBerry and Homer schools will move in. We'll be able to demolish the existing DeBerry school, and we'll finish the parking area. This may look familiar. Really not much has changed. The organization and the educational requirements really have provided the foundation for the project. Each school, the Homer and the DeBerry, have 3 classrooms per grade. We are having the integrated pre-kindergarten per its cohorts for the upper grade. So there'll be 3 classrooms for each of the schools. On the first floor, we have kindergarten and the pre-K program. Every grade is shared one common project area for project-based learning, for small group instruction, for individual instruction. And obviously those efforts would differ depending on the grade, but everyone has a project area. On the first floor, we have the PLC, low incidence program, identified for the Homer school. And on the DeBerry side, we have the SEBS low incidence program. SEBS will have 1 classroom per floor. We have the main administration areas flanking the entries, and we'll have a double vestibule for visitors to come in. So they'll come through the first vestibule. The general office administration staff will check them in. Once they have been approved to enter the building, the second set of doors will unlock and they'll be able to enter the building. Both schools will be able to be locked for community use space activities that would occur in the cafetorium or the gymnasium. We also have an elevator for each school that will be right off of the main lobbies. The darker purple spaces are additional supplemental special ed support spaces that are integrated throughout the academic wings. The cafeteria is going to be an open, bright, glazing lots of glass to celebrate the space. It will have a acoustic partition separating both 2 sides so that the Homer and DeBerry students can have lunch simultaneously, and to break down the space so that it's a smaller space. So there'll be like 200 students for each school. It will be able to have the partition removed or opened up so that you can have a very large space with the platform or stage for full assemblies for either school. The kitchen will be shared for both schools. And then on the opposite side is the gymnasium. And again, with a partition, it's just a simple screen that will come down, but you can have 2 simultaneous gym classes occurring simultaneously.
Donna,
Yes.
before you leave that slide, I think the last time the committee saw this, the gym was the other way.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So we've had several iterations. I appreciate that. Yes. At one point, we actually did have the gym rotated 90 degrees. And what we've done is I'm going to go back. What we've done is we have actually turned it so that it allowed additional setback from the street to give us more space between us and the street and the neighbors. And this really opened up some additional green space. It provides more relief and a buffer to the street. Thank you, Chris.
I thought Barbara might want to know that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Now, did it take away the space? It's still the same space, right?
Yep, exactly same space. It's 6,000 square feet. You can have a full-size high school basketball court. Not a lot of runoff space, but we also have some bleachers tucked in here as well. So as you can see, it makes a huge difference by just rotating it 90 degrees.
Barbara, I think that came up in a few of the neighborhood meetings we had about a little more of the width there, so that's been addressed.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. Perfect.
For the traffic flow, and it just is the better layout.
Yeah, it really, there was some tinkering we had to do up above, but it all works out, and it really just, it makes it a more cohesive space and site.
All right. Good.
On the second floor, it's again very similar layout. Again, 3 classrooms per grade, flanked by the project areas. And then we have the integrated special ed spaces within the academic wings. Each school has a music classroom And each school has an art classroom. And we're looking forward to creating special spaces within these nodes for the art gallery, for different types of project-based learning, for maker spaces, so that we can really create some lively activity in the corridors as appropriate. The media center will be shared by both schools, and they'll have a separate space for both schools within the media center or library for full classroom instruction. On the third floor is really strictly academic. Again, 3 classrooms per grade, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. We also have literacy libraries for professional development, for small group instruction, for different types of meetings. We've created it flexible so that, again, a movable acoustic partition can be open so that you can have a larger space for a larger professional development opportunities. In addition to the art and music, we're thrilled to say we have our science, tech, and engineering classrooms, 1 per school as well, as part of this project. And again, we're going to try to take advantage of some of these larger corridors for project-based learning to support those efforts. On the roof, what you see is 3 areas for the mechanical equipment that will be appropriately screened both visually and acoustically for the neighbors. And what we tried to do was allow for or maximize the roof that will be available for solar panels in the future.
Okay.
Here is a massing model or a view of Union Street. This would be the main entry of the school. Again, you can see the cars that could be parked here for handicap accessibility and for visitor parking. We have spent a lot of time on safety and security, so we have added bollards along here, and then we also have some other not necessarily as visual from a security perspective, concrete benches or other things that would also create a second barrier that we just want to highlight and bring into the site. The playground areas will all be fenced in, and you're not seeing here, but there'll be obviously play equipment for each school. This is looking from Monroe Street, the north side of the school. And Chris, thank you again. As you can see, pulling back the gym really makes a big difference to the neighbors, the neighborhood, and even the cohesiveness of the building. We're going to just show you a quick series of these kind of aerial views of the pods or the clusters of the 3 classrooms per grade. I'll just point out the differences. Pre-kindergarten and kindergarten are very similar. They're the larger size classrooms. They have the individual toilets within the classrooms. Pre-kindergarten has the cubbies in the classroom rather than out in the project area. But as you can see, we still provide small group instruction within the project area. All of the furniture is flexible for maximizing the flexibility and small group instruction that would occur in the classrooms. Each classroom will have a Promethean screen similar to an interactive whiteboard. We'll have the one-to-one devices in pre-kindergarten, probably not, but all the other grades. We have speech reinforcement systems, which is a microphone for the hearing of all the students and the teachers. Each classroom will have 2 sinks. One is ADA compliant or accessible, and the other one will be a deep sink for project-based use. And what is actually nice about these, here's a view, is the teachers decided they wanted to have built-in desks so that they do not have to clutter the space on the floor with their desks. They would prefer to tuck those away and be out on the floor with the students. So we have maximized the space. And as you can see, this will be the views of the classrooms. Kindergarten is very similar with the lockers out in the project area. Grades 1 through 5 are very similar, slightly smaller. They're identical so that you have full flexibility in the future if you want to move grades around. And here's a project area with all of the lockers. And again, we've tried to maximize storage wherever we possibly could.
Don, I love the color scheme, very soothing, and I love the natural illumination.
Thank you. We're trying to bring in as much natural light wherever we can. You can see we have glass wherever we can to bring in the natural light, even into the project areas or the corridors. And what we're trying to do is define each school to have its unique identity. So this is a corridor shot or hallway shot, which would identify. So blues may be, you know, the color palette for one school, and another color would be the color palette for the other school, just as another wayfinding device.
Yeah, I love that. The light.
This is the cafetorium, and this actually has the partition open, but as you can see, it's going to have beautiful windows and expanses looking into the neighborhood with a bench along the wall here. And this is an assembly type view. Looking back, this would be looking at the servery wall. This is the partition, which is open right now, or closed or put into the wall. Each school will have an entry door for the servery and an exit door. So they'll have the same entry and servery patterns. The media center we felt is a really special place from the academic side of the school, and we wanted to really make it a special space. So what we've been able to do is create a portion of it as a double height space with a lot of natural light coming in, and it actually will bring in natural light into the third floor as well. All of the stacks that you see are going to be movable except for along the walls. So you'll have opportunities if you want to even have different types of events in here to redesign, reshape the space. So we're not asking for a vote tonight. We're still finalizing the proprietary items, but this is where we are right now, which are very similar to what we've had for Brightwood and Lincoln. And we're just vetting those one more time, and we'll be before you before we submit our design development set to MSBA for a final vote on those. Our timeline has not changed, even thanks to COVID. MSBA is still moving forward. Everyone has seemed to get the hang of this. So we'll be submitting our schematic design submittal next week. That will get us through their vote, and then we'll continue design through July of 2021. And then construction will be about a 2-year project, and we should have occupancy by August of 2023.
Hey, very good.
So
So,
open it up for questions, Ms. Gresham.
To speak a little bit before we get going on the questions, Mayor. Sorry, this is Peter Garvey. This is the building component of it. I'd like to point out that there was a huge effort up front on the educational component. You know, the architect does a great job with the building components, but the educational components, Dan and his team, there's, 3 or 4 phone books that get of information that gets submitted to the MSBA. So it was really a lot of work that was done by the superintendent and his team. Kim, Stefania, Paul, Pat, to name a few. We had the nurses supervisor and the librarian. I'm sorry, I don't remember their names, but they put a lot of effort into this, and I can, it was a lot of extra work on their part. So I want to thank them for all their help, and hopefully we won't be needing them much further. And the help of DPW, we've met with them a couple times, as well as building department, planning, any other city members. And Barbara's probably going to say, what about the Article 97 and getting going with the park project? The Article 97 has been engrossed. We just need to get a voice vote from the House and Senate. And that is becoming, where that's a little bit problematic, but I think they've worked through how they're going to get it done. So hopefully that shakes loose in the next couple of weeks, and we can continue on with the additional approvals that we need to move forward with the park and this project.
I want to thank you very much for your yeoman efforts. And on the Article 97, I want to give a shout out to Senators Welch and Senator Lesser, and to my Billy Baker,
Yeah.
my office, who's from his State House days, is also the liaison. So he's very in depth on how these protocol going through. But you're right. I think within the next week, 10 days, they'll have a method of how it's engrossed. It's going to go. They just have to take a formal vote on it. But thank you, Garv, for all your efforts.
Yeah, Peter and his team has done an outstanding job for us. It's been a team approach, and they've been absolutely great with Don and her schematic design teams.
I'll open it up, please, to our school committee members for any questions or comments. It looks great.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if I may. I want to thank Donna and her team for all the work that they've done and all the meetings that we've had and all the explanations and all the good stuff. So I have a couple of questions. So Union Street will still run as it is, right? It'll still go in that direction? And it will not interfere with the parking of families on that side, or homeowners? They'll still park?
I'm sorry, your question is it going to interfere with the homeowners along Union Street?
Yes, parking.
Parking, no, nothing has changed. They'll still be able to park the way they normally do. That was the whole purpose of creating the drop-off for the buses, so they don't interfere with the...
All right, and my next question is Monroe Street. Is it going to be a one-way Monday through Friday, or the whole week? Because parents
right now it's the whole week. We've discussed that with DPW, and we're trying to schedule a meeting with the Board of Public Works. So and I'm not going to speak for the DPW, but I think it gets a little bit confusing when you do Monday through Friday.
I think, Barb, I think Union Street still has that for the church, I believe, on Sunday.
Right. Not Union, Monroe.
It was Monroe.
That's the mosque. They have a church on Monroe Street. I mean, well, it's facing Monroe and State Street.
I was going to say St. John's, but I know, Eddie, you're looking to set up a board of with Chris
Board of Public Works.
Got it. But we don't want to confuse people, especially with kids being going there. So usually it's a little view, but usually it's pretty uniform. It's going to be one way, then it's one way. But I know on
so it's going to be one way from Hancock Street down.
That's the proposed plan, yes.
Yes. All right. There are some homeowners on that street as well, so that was their concern. I don't know if they've been notified. That is because
we had preliminary, I shouldn't say preliminary, we've had several conversations, and as we were gearing up to come back out to the community, just to give everyone an update where we are before we submit to MSBA, the COVID happened. We definitely will be reaching out to all of the neighbors, just not those on Monroe, but also on Union Street, because we understand they have different concerns and needs as it relates to the school. So we will follow up with them as soon as we're able.
All right, perfect. My next question, my last question, is the playground. Some constituents was wondering what's the capacity of students being on the playground at any given time? How many students can be on the playground?
We're still working through all of the equipment and trying to balance the equipment and the hardscape, but it should be 60 to 90 students, which should be close to a full grade at a time.
Okay, all right, perfect. Thank you.
Barbara, any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, we do have to take a vote. Again, this is to approve the schematic design, the middle for DeBerry Homer Elementary School project, and to authorize the project team to submit the schematic design related submittals to the Mass School Building Authority, the MSBA, for consideration. Is there a motion on the floor?
So moved.
Motion by Vice Chair Collins, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Naylor. Roll call vote is required. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Hurst,
Yes.
Attorney Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Naylor,
Yes.
Ms. Gresham,
Yes.
Ms. Perez, absent Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mayor Sarno.
Yes, for sufficient votes, matter passed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stay healthy, everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Folks, thank you.
Thank you. B is a vote to approve the request to accept care management control north side Walnut Street, 11952-0102, and the rear of 656 Union Street, 11750-0151 from the tax title custodian. Superintendent Warren.
Thank you, Mayor. This is your packet on this. Patrick, do you want to walk them through it quickly? This is just some small properties that abut two of our schools where we're taking over the property.
Sure. The property, one property is right adjacent to the new DeBerry school, the current DeBerry school, as well as the new DeBerry school. It's a vacant lot that the city took by tax title, and it would be better use for us to take it and build it in as part of the school property. The other lot is another tax title property, and it's already part of the Brookings campus. So I think that's more of a housekeeping issue, as that already should have been taken over by the school committee. It's actually part of the Brookings parking lot, and we need to take that over in school committee control officially.
Any questions or comments?
Been through building.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. What number on Union Street is the property?
It's Union is rear of 656 Union Street, which.
May I ask a question? And I'm sorry if it's dark. My sensor light goes off. The one on Union is vacant. What about the one that abuts Brookings?
It's
actually already part of the Brookings project. We're doing this.
We already built that.
Should have done it before.
Oh, okay.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing
It's
none.
been through building.
I will, well, I'm just gonna make two separate motions because they're both tax title and very distinct properties for ease of you filing. I think I'll make two separate motions.
Okay, Vice Chair Collins.
The first motion would be to accept care, management, and control of the rear of 656 Union Street, parcel 11750-0151.
The motion by Vice Chair Collins, second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Gresham. Roll call vote is required. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
You're muted, Patty.
You're muted, Patty.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Hurst,
Yes.
Attorney Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Naylor,
Yes.
Ms. Gresham,
Yes.
Ms. Perez, absent Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mayor Sarno.
For sufficient votes, matter passes. Thank you very much. Vice Chair Collins on
And
the
I would
second.
make another motion that we accept care, management, and control of north side of Walnut Street, parcel 11952-0120.
Motion by Vice Chair Collins, your second, please.
Second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Gresham. Roll call vote is required. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Hurst,
Yes.
Attorney Murphy,
Yes.
Ms. Naylor,
Yes.
Ms. Gresham,
Yes.
Ms. Perez, absent Mr. Collins,
Yes.
Mayor Sarno.
For sufficient votes, matter passes. Thank you very much. C is the vote to approve the fourth quarter remote learning and grading for the remainder of the 2019-2020 school year. Superintendent Warwick, please.
Thank you, Mayor. There's a piece that was sent out to you on this. Our team worked on this for quite a while. As you know, we concluded grading for third quarter on March 12th, when the kids had their last day in session, and concluded the grades. That was about 70% completed for third quarter at that time, based on the work that was turned in. So for fourth quarter, we had to come up with a grading system. The state recommended a credit, no credit system, and our team has been working on how we provide the remote learning and how we're going to grade, give feedback on the remote learning, and calculate the grades. So that's a presentation now. It's up on the screen as well. And Paul Foster and Stefan Urishila are going to walk through it with you.
Stats, you look like a DJ, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah.
Try.
He's comfortable with this remote piece now.
Yeah.
That's a stack of vinyl records.
Vinyl's making a comeback.
Yes, it is.
So as the superintendent had stated, a few weeks ago, we had brought to you the Springfield Public Schools remote learning plan. And since then, the governor announced that school would be closed for the remainder of the year, and they released an updated learning guidance. So we revised ours also to have their guidance included. And as Superintendent Warwick said, we met with numerous groups, including the SEA, to come up with this revised vision. So this fourth marking period guidance has guidance on what teachers and students are expected to do. So teachers will be developing weekly assignments that will be communicated to students and families. And we're asking that students complete one assignment per course per week. Teachers will be working collaboratively to create these assignments and will support students so they can complete them. We also have our special education and ESOL teachers working with the teams to adjust or accommodate or revise the lessons so all students will be able to participate. So once we get to the bullets, we're going to talk about elementary schools first. So learning activities should be provided that take about half of the school day. So we're asking for about 3 hours a day, and that includes all core academics such as reading and math, as well as specials, which could be music, art, physical education. All students are also expected to complete 45 minutes of reading on iReady and 45 minutes of math. This is something that they were doing in their classroom. And there'll be exceptions or accommodations made for students who are not able to get online. Schools will provide guidance to parents on how much time students should spend per subject area for the week. Schools and teacher teams will also coordinate so that students will receive one communication per week outlining the learning activities, meetings, and expectations for the week. We understand that families, some of them are currently working, some of them are home, some of them have multiple students, and so we want to create the easiest way for them to be in contact with the school and know what's going on in the student's classroom. Schools and teacher teams are also designing the lessons that should be completed independently by students with clear directions and appropriate scaffolding. So students, we want them to be doing it mostly independently. For teacher-directed instruction, we're asking that those lessons be pre-recorded. In case students can't get online at that time, they'll still be able to participate or learn from the lesson. Teachers should engage directly with each class at least one time a week via video conference, and that would be for the purpose of clarifying learning activities, checking in, and providing support or clarification for any questions that students have. In addition to the weekly direct communication with the class, teachers should be communicating to all their students so students can communicate and ask questions about learning activities. Teachers are expected to check for and respond to messages or communications from students and families daily and are expected to respond to communication within 24 hours. In consultation with the special education and ESOL teachers through weekly grade level and subject area team meetings, teachers should ensure that appropriate scaffolds and supports and differentiation are provided so all students can participate in the lessons and the learning activities. Grades for the fourth marking period will be credit or no credit. For the purposes of determining whether the student earns credit, each student should have one assignment per week per class subject that is submitted to their teacher for feedback. When the assignment is given, the students will have a week to complete it. Teachers will provide feedback on the submitted assignment and can request that the assignment be revised or resubmitted. Earning credit for a given assignment and ultimately the marking period is based on submission of the assignments. So we're asking in the fourth marking period that the student submits 60% of the assignments in the content area over the course of this period. In addition, to earn the credit for math and reading, students should be completing an average of 45 minutes in reading and 45 minutes in math of iReady. For students with documented issues accessing and participating in learning activities for technology or any other reasons, efforts should be made with the schools and the teachers to provide alternative opportunities to demonstrate engagement with learning, and schools should award credit in cases where students are not able to complete the assigned activities. Now we're moving on to secondary, and secondary is very similar to the elementary. So there's a few exceptions with the way that secondary schools are structured. It's structured by course, and so learning activities should average about 2 hours to complete per week per class. And so depending on how the school is structured, it could average from 12 hours to 16 hours a week. Once again, schools and teacher teams are coordinating, so students are receiving one message per week from the teacher, so they know what needs to be completed. Most learning activities, again, should be designed to be completed independently with students, by students with clear directions and appropriate scaffolding included. For direct teacher-led instructional activities, those should also be pre-recorded, so students can participate at any time in the day. Teachers should engage directly with each class at least once a week via video conference to clarify any learning activities, to check in, or to provide support or clarification. In addition to the weekly direct communication with class, teachers should communicate to all their students so they can communicate via, regardless if it's email, however they're deciding to communicate with their students. And they have, teachers once again have 24 hours to respond. In consultation with special education and ESOL teachers through weekly grade level or subject area team meetings, teachers are ensuring that the scaffolds are in place so all students can participate in the learning activities. And once again, grades for the fourth marking period will be credit, no credit. They will have one assignment per week per course that should be submitted to the teacher, and the teacher will provide feedback on that assignment. To earn credit for the fourth marking period, students need to turn in 60% of the assignments for each course. In addition, middle school students will earn credit in math and ELA, and they are expected to do 45 minutes a week of reading and math in iReady. In addition, students already participating in another intervention online will continue to participate in that that online intervention. And finally, for students with documented issues, once again, accessing or participating in learning activities for the technology or other reasons, efforts have to be made to provide alternative opportunities to demonstrate engagement so they can receive credit. Paul?
And so that's really the proposal around how we handle fourth marking period and remain consistent with the guidance coming from the department that fourth marking period should be a credit, no credit grade. Excuse me. For middle school and high school students, we also have a final grade. And so especially at the high school level, the final grade is the most important grade because it's what impacts GPA. So the GPA is not based on marking period grades. It's based strictly on the final grade at the end of the year. And so one of the things we had to do was think about how do we appropriately create final grades for middle and high school students in light of the school closure. And so I'm just going to walk through this quickly. What you can see here is that we are we want to give students, so Stefania laid out what students have to do to earn credit for the fourth marking period, which is they've got to turn in at least 60% of the assignments, the weekly assignments they're given per class. If they do that, they'll get 100%. So for example, at the high school level, in addition to getting a letter grade, students get a percentage. So we're essentially saying if students attempt to do the work and get those assignments turned in the fourth marking period, that's going to be 100% in the fourth marking period. If they do not, it's going to be a 59%. And the point of a 59 as opposed to a 0 is to give students the benefit of the doubt because of this is such an unusual circumstance. There are a subset of students who were not doing well academically prior to the school closure. So they were in that kind of in that 40 to 59% range in terms of their percentage. And so for those students, even if the math doesn't quite get them to passing, based on getting 100% for the fourth marking period, if they were in that 40 to 59% range before the school closure and they do the work in the fourth marking period, we're going to guarantee to give them a minimum of a 60%, which is a D- and constitutes passing, because we want to give students an opportunity to get to passing in the fourth marking period if they need to. The last piece is this table that you see. So in the current grading framework we use, we outline what percentage each marking period should count towards the final grade. And at the high school level, each marking period counts as 22.5%, and the final exam counts as 10%. At the middle school level, each marking period counts 25% because we don't include, some middle schools may offer final exams, but it's not considered part of the final grade calculation. And so what you can see here, because we're closed for the rest of the year, there's not an easier, necessarily fair way to proceed with final exams. And so what you see here is there's no weight given to the final exam or to a final exam in the final grade determination. And we're putting most of the weight on the first and second marking period. So each of those marking periods will be 35% of the final grade. Third marking period, because we did have some live instruction in the third marking period, will be 20%. Fourth marking period will be 10%. Same thing at the middle school level. And then you can see for semester courses, so we certainly have classes at the high school level that would have started at the beginning of the third marking period. So the third marking period would count as 70% of the final grade, and the fourth marking period would count as 30% of the final grade. So our feeling was this was the best way to balance. We wanted to give students some incentive to continue learning during this period of school closure. So we didn't want to say, you don't have to do anything, right? So hence the weekly assignments requiring some of those to be submitted to earn credit. But we also recognize this is an unprecedented time and want to be able to give students as much benefit of the doubt as possible. And we think this proposal is the best way to do that. And I think at that point, Stefania and I are available for questions.
Thank you, Stefania and Stats, Paul. And also want to give another shout out, Focus, with Matt, Steve, Carey, and Brendan Mahal. Thanks for filtering all these meetings. We'll open it up to questions, but I just say to the superintendent during the presentation, it's really, if the student really puts forth trying, they're going to be able to pass. So we'll open it up to questions. Superintendent Warwick.
That was our intent. It has been through curriculum programs subcommittee. I didn't know if Denise wanted to speak to it.
Sure, I don't mind doing so, Superintendent. I was going to see if there were any questions, but if there aren't, I will just say that thank you for putting this together. I'm sure that it was very cumbersome. I think that one of the things that I really wanted to point out based on the curriculum and program subcommittee meeting that did occur was that the silver lining and the hope that we don't have to necessarily do this again in the future is that if we should experience another pandemic, or if we, don't see ourselves, going back in the fall for whatever reason, that at least a framework has already been developed, and it is something that we can work towards being able to sort of critique or tweak should we have to do that. I think that was one of the concerns that was brought up, and I know I had an opportunity to speak to Vice Chair Collins about that, and that it's not something that is going to be implemented forever, but that it'll be tweaked based on circumstances. And so the superintendent and his team did the best that they could considering this current time frame and what we're experiencing right now, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
Hey, may I ask a question? So my question really, and I think that I agree with School Committee Woman Hurst that this is absolutely a really nice framework for us to build from. I guess my question is around, you know, thinking about students who are in vocational classes or students who are, you know, thinking about gym and stuff like that, that obviously is somewhat difficult for us to think about how to be able to give them work to do at home because they're not able to do that hands-on piece. How are we, I guess, how do we foresee that playing out when it comes to the credit requirements and stuff like that for students, particularly in high school? And I guess the other piece of that question would be really thinking about is there an option for students to converse with their teachers? And I guess I'm thinking about, again, vocationally, basically, because Putnam is a little bit unique from the rest of the high schools, but just realizing that there are some shops that students may be able to continue doing things at home, but then there are some shops that absolutely could not, you know, they could not do anything at home. So I just wonder about that experience for students and what we're doing there.
Excellent question. Yeah, and the intent would be that the teachers are all reaching out to their students. So for the voc teachers, the same thing. And relative to physical education, again, we can reach out and suggest activities for students to engage in. So that would be the thought process, that those voc teachers would also be required to reach out and try to continue the best way they can with appropriate activities.
May I ask a question to that end, because that wasn't something that I had thought about yesterday when we met. Superintendent, is there going to be, or what will be the effect for those students that are graduating from a Putnam who have to sit for some level of licensure?
So we'd have to work through each of those cases with each of, you know, we have 21 different voc programs and they're all different. And we'd have to work through those shop by shop, but making sure that the teachers are following through and getting their kids to where they need to get to. So we'll follow through on that. Again, the teachers from each shop would have to follow through with the kids on that and see where we can get with that.
Thank you.
The licensures are state driven, correct?
Typically state driven, and sometimes a test, sometimes it's a submittal, and we'd be responsible for pulling all that together. But it looks different for every one of the shops. Some have state licensed, others don't. Yeah,
Right. So
but there are requirements.
I'm sure the ones that are state driven, the state's already looking towards that as a way to how they, we have no kids all over the state.
Yeah, we'll have to work on that.
But I commend everybody that has worked on this because it shows that nobody's going to get a free pass. There's a structured opportunity here. And if you can put in a strong, you try hard, you work hard, it's going to be acknowledged and you're going to be able to pass. So I appreciate Ms. Hurst and Ms. Naylor. I didn't even think of the angle of, you know, the phys ed angle too, besides the shop that you want
The art and music.
stay a little
We
bit.
give them all Fitbits and make them get out there and walk.
Get out there and walk. There are a lot of kids walking around the city when we actually get it Sunday. But we haven't gotten a lot of that lately, so I'm sure they're in the homes, and I'm sure their parents are waiting for some better weather to get them outside. But
Well, it's too bad we can't count TikTok as physical activity. They definitely get an A there. 'Cause we're doing that all day.
Yeah. I'll tell you, and I hope, I think Ms. Hurst brought it up, and I'm knocking on wood now, that this is the last time we face this, but we don't know.
Right.
We don't know whether we move to summer, fall, winter, we don't know. So we're well prepared, and I know across the state, it has been noticed how we're not perfect, but how Springfield's been ahead of the curve on a lot of things, especially on the school side. So,
And I did,
Vice Chair Collins?
Committeewoman Hurst's point about this being adaptable, because unfortunately, as much as we don't want to hear this, 40 states are already predicting that they may not be able to open on time in the fall.
Right.
So we already need to start thinking about how do we adapt this if we don't have the beginning of school.
That's wrong.
I hope it's wrong, but 40 states, according to just before I came down, are all looking at the fact that they probably won't open on time.
A lot of work on the remote learning's been done. Obviously, we'd have to revisit the grading because the grading was based on finishing 3/4 live. So we'd have to bring back a new grading policy to the committee. But a lot of the remote learning pieces are in place. And again, this has all been vetted with the Springfield Teachers Union.
Are we having the students turn their laptops in at the end of school?
We're still working on that. There's 2 schools of thought on that. One, if we have them turn them in, we can get a count, we can control it. We probably have less loss, but we're going to try to do something. And we're looking at putting together a summer program, maybe enrichment for everybody. And in order to do that, the students would still need their laptops. So we'll come back to you on that. We've been debating, there's two different schools of thought on it.
And especially if there's any student that seems to be having difficulty with their laptops, so we can get them back and do whatever we need to them, and be ready again for the fall.
Sure, so that's one school of thought, is collecting them for that. But Paul has set up something so that if a student's having difficulty, we have an opportunity to turn it back in and get a different laptop. So we're working on those right now.
Can I just say something? And I understand I'm only one person, one voice, but you know, it is something to think about to allow them to keep them, especially if we know that the governor has already stated that daycare facilities will be closed until June 29th. You know, what does that mean for summer programming? What does that mean for parents who don't have any other routine or structure for their kids, and that actual device could provide some real access to some level of learning?
And I tend to agree with you, Mrs. Hurst, because if it starts to look like we might have delayed opening, and even if it doesn't, we may be asking for activities to be given even during the course of the summer. You know, where the kids are going to need something to keep them busy. If we can give them educational activities while they've got their laptop, so much the better.
So we're thinking we put something together on that. If we do, then we wouldn't be able to collect them. So we'll come back to you on that, but I understand both points.
That goes to a good point you bring up this first, because right now, you don't know if you're going to be able to have any summer camps,
right?
Recreational programs, any waterway areas, any pools. You know, we're hopeful that that's not so, but we're being realistic here that those programs might not be there temporarily because of the situation. We're under daycare, Governor Baker extending that to June 29th. That's a couple months away, still a couple months away.
Yeah.
Before it came down, California just reclosed all of its beaches.
Yeah, I thought
they had issues but past couple of weekends, and they're starting to see more cases. So they just reclosed all their beaches.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the next logical question is, what are we going to do for summer school? And we've already have a team working on it, and we're going to prepare a live summer school, should we be able to operate one, but also a remote as a backup. So we're looking at both because we just don't know yet. We will do summer school, but whether it's live or remote, we don't know. And we're also thinking of some summer enrichment for everyone. Hence, if we do that, we would leave, we would not. So we'll be back to you on where we're at with that. We're looking at that.
And by the way, we're at our cabinet head meetings. I think it's 422,000, almost 400,000. But we're almost going to reach. We'll probably reach 500,000.
Reach 500,000
this by the beginning of next week.
Right.
500,000 meals of breakfast. Served to our families, basically.
Along that line, I've already started to get questions that are those same feeding sites going to be left open during the summer?
I think we're looking at that, so that's.
We always have summer feeding
We
sites.
did, but
So we'll get back to you on that as well. We haven't gotten how many in the summer and where yet. But
I think you're
something to consider.
that we want to keep.
Yeah. That would make some sense, that's for sure.
yeah, I mean, for continuity. Like,
Yeah.
people are already asking, am I going
And
to be
they're
able to go to
pretty-
the same place?
Geographically sound
They are.
relative to being spread throughout the city with a 17 sites. So I'll work with the team on that. We'll see.
I also want to, it's a side note, but with the census, which is extremely important, because we have to stay over that $150 mark. The Secretary Gowan, we spoke a couple of times this week, and these will be utilized too to get information out to those ward areas or precincts that have not been turning those census forms in. So they're going to be, school things are going to be utilized there to make sure we get every dime coming back here to the city.
So important there.
So I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Superintendent.
We've worked hard on it, as well as done a lot of public information on it. In addition to all the extra public information with this, she's going to be pushing the census pieces, working with the census bureau.
Gladys, election
Because we
commissioner,
really need that.
Gladys Ayola is very appreciative.
A question on that, and Paul, you might be the one to answer this. I know we've got screening set up on our laptops to limit what sites they can get on. The census is through a US government site. If they tried to answer the census on one of our school, let's say that's the only laptop in the house. So if they tried to go on and do the census electronically using the school laptop, you know if it would go through?
It would. Yeah, we definitely don't block .gov sites, and we can actually encourage folks to use their school-issued laptop to do it.
So maybe we should again remind people that, you know, families that don't have their own, you may use your students.
Besides,
We'll keep pushing.
the Secretary Gowan of the $50,000 grant is sending my way on. That's part of the plan of school outreach too, that with a hard copy of that you need to fill out that census.
Yeah, and it's very important for funding, and especially school funding also.
Yes.
So we're on it, and we'll work with you on that. There, we'll continue.
Any other questions or comments on this?
Before we forget what we're on, I'm going to make a motion that we vote to approve the fourth quarter remote learning and grading for the remainder of 2019-20 school year.
The motion, if there's, again, any other questions or comments, you're fine, but Vice Chair Compton has made a motion on that. Questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. Is there
Second,
by Ms. Hurst? Roll call. Require, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Hurst?
yes.
Attorney Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Naylor?
Yes.
Ms. Gresham?
Yes.
Ms. Perez, absent. Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mayor Sarno?
Sufficient votes, matter passed. Thank you everybody for your work. Very, very, very important.
Team did a great job on it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you.
We'll move to now D, the vote to approve a project management course at the High School of Science and Technology. Superintendent Ward, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We always have the school committee approve any courses. This is a submission from SciTech. All view of what it's all about, and then we'll take it forward. It has been through curriculum and programs.
Yeah, so it's a course that was actually developed by teachers at the High School of Science and Technology. It's a project management course. It's a cross-disciplinary elective where over the course of the year, the students, likely targeted primarily 11th graders, will be completing two basically large-scale projects. The first one they're planning to do is on food security. And the idea is it would be a real-world relevant project where the students would have a chance to work with actual industry professionals. So I could imagine them reaching out to, for example, the Springfield Food Policy Council and engaging in conversations about issues of food policy. So that's the first semester project. And then in the second semester, students would have the opportunity to choose a project of interest to them. They would research it, they would take it on. And this is meant, the High School of Science and Technology is intending this to be a precursor course. The College Board has introduced a new AP course called the AP Capstone, which is also basically a project-based learning course where students do a capstone project. I think SciTech is their intent is that students would take this project course first as an entry point to then taking the AP capstone project after that.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Ms. Hurst, I don't want to your committee, any comments at all?
Yes, so I will just say that we approved it unanimously out of the Curriculum and Program Subcommittee. And we think it's a great course. We think it will allow our students to have a wonderful opportunity to not only explore and learn more about the subject matter that gets assigned to them, but then to be able to pick their own assignment during the second part of the course.
You know, you got that film noir look there, Denise.
You know, I'm so sorry. My sensor like keeps coming on and off. I apologize.
Hey, it's like Hitchcock. Danny loves, he did that one, that cabinet heads. And we walked in, he had the profile. We said, Hitchcock.
I'm sorry. I turned it on, but I don't know what happened.
It was good.
Obviously, you're doing it from work, so you don't get disturbed at home.
Yeah, I'm like relegated to the breezeway.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, is a motion on the floor?
So moved.
And this first is second.
Second.
Required. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Hurst?
Yes.
Attorney Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Naylor?
Yes.
Ms. Gresham?
Yes.
Ms. Perez, absent. Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mayor Sarno?
Board of Sufficient votes, matter passes. Thank you very much. E is the vote to approve an MOU with the SCA, the Springfield Education Association, regarding seeds evaluation during the COVID-19 declared state of emergency. Superintendent Warwick.
We're recommending approval, Mayor. We discussed this in executive session.
Any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, there's a motion on the floor. So moved. Motion by
Second.
by Attorney Peter Murphy. Roll call vote is required. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Hurst?
Yes.
Attorney Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Naylor?
Yes.
Ms. Gresham?
Yes.
Ms. Perez, absent. Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mayor Sarno?
Yes, board of sufficient votes, this matter passes. Very much. And again, we're at historic gavel of Chris's dad, Edward Collins, 1950. I was honored to do that. Informational items, recognition of the Pioneer Valley Excellence Teaching Award. I saw there was a full page ad or article ad that was put in the Republican the Green Spoon on the Superintendent Award.
Yeah, we sent something out on this, but you know, we have our 26 winners again this year. You know, outstanding teachers in every category, and then one new teacher in that category. They've done a great job. Usually we bring them down to school committee. Our intent is to still do that when this COVID situation ends for recognition. They always have an event that the team from Bridgewood puts together for them. And again, that'll be scheduled at the appropriate time also. But their names are all there. And I don't know, Mary, you usually read them off. Do you want me to read them off?
You can read them off, yeah.
So we have the teachers in the different schools. So we have Paige Emerson from Brightwood, a pre-K to 5 counselor. Karen Skarzinski from Brookings, pre-K. Lynn Britton from Brunton, grade 3 ELA and ESL. Marissa Donato, Central High School, biology. Angelica Forth, Central, grade 9 biology. Anthony Santiago, grade 9 science, Central. Valerie Hardman, DeBerry, grade 4 math. Stacia Bryant, grade 7 ELA, Duggan. Jenny Nicholson, pre-K to 5, Raina. Caitlin Sayers, Raina, grade 4 math. Ian Howes, biology, commerce. Jennifer Waltz, English and AP seminar, commerce. Deborah Lord, grade 6 ELA, Kennedy. Kiana Johnson, grade 8 social studies, Kylie. Sheena Zerfus, grade 6 math, Kylie. Aaron Todd, grade 2-3 at Esau, Lincoln. Joe Giacomona, adjustment counselor, SciTech. Jenny Schwitz, SciTech, Esau. Benjamin Vander Poohey, chemistry SciTech. I don't know, Mary.
I didn't say that Yahoo on that.
No, I didn't say that. No, thank God. April Goss, Springfield Public Day Elementary K-5 counselor. Kristen Goya, SPD Middle School, Public Day Middle, grade 7. Michael Cruz, SPD Middle, 6 to 8. Jeremy Lassard, TAG, grade 8 Science. Jillian Cook, Washington Street, grade 3 ELA and ESOL. Maria Kaling, White Street, ESOL, grades 4 to 5. Samantha Jaskowitz, White Street, grade 1. And our new teacher, Heather Werneman, Washington, grades K to 5. So those are our winners for this year. Put down for a formal recognition as well.
I think that was important that we recognize our dedicated teachers and getting awards, and then we're hopeful in the near future we can bring them down, but we wanted to let people, the viewing audience, know.
Yeah, and again, like I say, they'll get their recognition, with a regional group when it's appropriate also.
I don't know if there's any questions or comments from the school committee members. Okay, hearing none, we'll now move to B, boundary plan adjustment. Superintendent Ward, please.
Yeah, every few years we bring forward a boundary plan adjustment to review with you. When you have a boundary plan, the ebbs and flows and different moves relative to enrollment. So we've got to adjust the boundaries so we keep the enrollments right, given the size of the schools. So Paul pulled together those adjustments we're putting forward for this year. We want to review them with you now. Paul?
All right, sorry, I just realized I had to unmute. Okay, so what I'm going through is actually, these are the slides that describe the changes, and these are actually going to be up on our website, available for the public as well to see. So the superintendent already spoke to this, and I'll go through these quickly because you all know this, but I wanted you to see the slides that we're sharing out with the public. Obviously, we're embarking on, these are small tweaks, and it's a function of addressing crowding in schools and making sure that we don't have schools that have more students than the building is able to serve. And all of the changes outlined here are proposed to take effect for the 2020-2021 school year. So what does this mean for students? So it does mean, and again, these are relatively small tweaks, but for currently enrolled students in a school where the boundary is shifting, they will be reassigned to a different school for next year. Obviously, we'll handle notifying and communication with them. And it's really a two-step process. We've already sent mailings letting families know if they live within one of the boundaries that's changing, letting them know that a boundary change is in process. And we will also send then a second letter for any families where a student actually, their school assignment is changing. Consistent with our previous practices, students who are in who are entering the final grade at their assigned school, so that would be 5th or 8th grade in the case the change is proposed here, they are able to remain. We're able to grandfather them at the school they're currently attending, but they do need to provide their own transportation to that school. So the process, again, I spoke to this already, but families are notified of the potential change. We're sharing them on the website. We would typically have community meetings to share out proposed boundary changes, so we're doing it virtually. So we're doing the mailing, sharing the details on the website. There's a form on the website where families or anyone in the community, actually anyone in the public, can give feedback on the changes. We'll consider that feedback, consider any, consider those feedback before making anything final, and consider if anything in the feedback suggests we tweak something. And then finally, once the changes are finalized, notifying those families where a particular student is being reassigned to a different school. So moving into the changes, there's a number of them. I'm going to move relatively quickly through these. So this is an attendance zone. I know the maps can be a little hard to read. I will try to sort of orient. This is just above Forest Park. So this is along East Columbus Avenue, just north of Long Hill Street. It's a neighborhood that currently, there's very few students who live here. As you can see, a lot of it, half my little yellow area is in the river. But you can see it's a small number of students, so 9 currently enrolled K through 5th grade students. It's currently zoned to Harris. we would actually shift them to Sumner, which actually results in this attendance zone, the students attending a school much closer to their home. And actually, for many of them, it's potentially walkable as opposed to riding a bus to Harris. This is another section that is zoned to Harris. So what you're mostly seeing here is actually Forest Park, the actual park. But you can see there's a small set of neighborhoods just south of Forest Park. Those are currently zoned to Harris. For that neighborhood, we are rezoning to Beale. Again, rezoning so that the students are actually going to school closer to home. So one of the things you'll see as a theme, I hope, as I go through this is that where possible, we're actually getting students closer to home with their assigned school, and in some cases, even reducing busing. Brunton to Harris, this is an unusual zone. This is let me get this right, east side of Harkness Avenue. This is a tiny sliver along Harkness Avenue that currently is zoned to Brunton. All of the blue that you see around it is already going to Harris. And so we would be taking this one sliver on the east side of Harkness and shifting them, it's from the East Longmeadow line to Gifford, shifting that one section to Harris, so the entire zone is going to Harris. There may be a busing implication because the reason that east side of Harkness has been going to Brunton is because of Safe Walk, and so we may still have to provide a bus, but we're already doing that now, so it doesn't add busing because we're already busing students to Brunton from this zone.
Paul, I have a quick question.
Yep.
So it says one currently enrolled K through 5, fifth grade. What does that mean? One student?
Yes.
One student?
Yes, currently. But I should say when we sent the mailing to any family with a currently enrolled Springfield Public School student who lived with zone, because we don't know who younger siblings and things like that, to make sure families were aware. But yes, there's only one student currently in this zone.
Wow.
It doesn't surprise me, Barbara, that's an older established neighborhood where people have been in those houses for a long, long time. They probably don't have any school-age children. Not a lot of turnover on that street.
Oh, wow. Okay.
As I said, many of these are very small changes. Okay, so this zone is actually, it's a zone that is right along 291. So you see this dark here is 291, in between 291 and Liberty Street, and not actually even all the way to Liberty. So this is Franklin. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this is basically between 291 and Franklin Street. It's a small zone. We currently had attending Boland, but that meant that these students were crossing the Armory Rotary. Well, one of two things. Either they had to walk across the Armory Rotary, what we actually are doing is busing them to Boland. And so they're probably still going to ride a bus, but this addresses some crowding at Boland, and we have space at Johnson, which is pretty much similar distance from this attendance area. This is a zone right close to downtown, well, in downtown basically, that is currently riding a bus to Bowles. Now this was, I think you may remember that we had to bring some proposed boundary changes that we would put into place when the new DeBerry and new Homer school opened, because the MSBA wanted us to ensure we had 3 classes per grade level at both schools, and DeBerry, it's currently only 2 classes per grade level. This is actually a change we were planning to make anyway with the opening of the new Homer DeBerry, and there's actually enough space in DeBerry right now to go ahead and make the change. And Bowles is actually one of our most overcrowded schools at this time. So it made sense to just accelerate this particular change and do it now. So this is in the downtown. It goes up, it's basically State Street to Gridiron, running along Dwight and Main. So it's a lot of it isn't residential, but there are some families living in there. Well, 42 actually, so a decent number. They would shift from Bowles to DeBerry.
I have a question about this. I know that previously you showed us something similar when we were talking about the placement and the zoning for students going to DeBerry, Homer, and stuff like that. So my assumption is that this is going to take precedence over anything that we were given before as possibilities, or that it's not even relevant and maybe this is an area that wasn't talked about before. And so I just want to get clarity on that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So this is actually, we did talk about this particular one before, and the plan was to shift this zone from Bowles to DeBerry. So all we're really doing here is we're making the shift next year instead of waiting until Homer DeBerry opens.
Okay.
So I should have clarified. So none of the changes here are inconsistent with what we had proposed to the committee previously with the Homer DeBerry. We're just going ahead and making some of the changes now as opposed to waiting 2 years.
Okay, thank you.
This is another example, actually. This is one that we had brought to you. It's a little complicated, but this is one we had brought forward as part of the Homer DeBerry change. We're going to be moving students from Bradley's attendance zone into DeBerry when DeBerry opens. We currently have some space at Bradley, and Dryden is overcrowded. This is down in the south end. This is along Dwight Street Extension in Saratoga. This is a neighborhood. There's about 30 students currently. And we want to shift them from Dryden to Bradley. So they're going to be going to school much closer to home by making this shift. And this was a shift that was going to happen 2 years from now anyway.
And Paul, let me ask another follow-up.
Sure.
I know, again, we talked about prior meeting about the expansion of the pre-K and to full-day classrooms. So I'm assuming this has something to do with it as well, the overcrowding, that a lot of these schools are also looking to expand into full-day programs.
Well, no, and actually none of these changes, we haven't had to make any of these changes in order to accommodate the full day pre-K.
Okay.
Generally speaking, most of our schools have a pretty fixed number of K through 5 classrooms. And so where we're changing these as a result of crowding, it's because the sort of current number of K-5 classrooms, we've got more kids than we should have in some of those classes.
Okay.
But it isn't really a case, we're not sort of changing classes from K-5 to pre-K.
Okay, great, thank you.
We are adding pre-K where we have space in a lot of neighborhood schools. We're doing that simultaneously. It's just not part of this plan. But we've got the space to do that.
So another change, White Street is crowded. Kensington has some space. There are obviously schools that are very close together. What you see on this one is that small yellow area. It's along Kensington and Bloomfield. And if you can see in the map, Kensington School is literally right here. These are houses that are mere steps away from Kensington, where the kids are currently going to White Street, and so it's a pretty small chunk. This part of the city it's fairly dense with students, and so we can't a whole bunch of the boundary because we'd be shifting too. This would help the crowding at White Street, and there's space at Kensington. So one of the other ones we found is that Pottinger is crowded. And actually Glenwood has space, but the easiest way to accomplish this change was actually to do a 2-part shift, so we're keeping kids as close to home for their school assignment as possible. So what you see here is a neighborhood. This is Strong Street, Roy Street. It's along Carew, and taking this area in yellow and shifting it from Pottinger's boundary to Liberty. So that's going to shift about 28 students from Pottinger to Liberty, which helps the Pottinger crowding. And then we would take 38 students from Liberty and shift them to Glenwood. And again, the reason for this sort of 2-step is we're trying to address crowding at Pottinger. We have available space at Glenwood. Liberty actually sits in between the two, and we're trying to keep students as, their home and school as close together as possible. So this triangle along Newberry, Woodmont, Denton Circles there, Drew Court, we would shift this triangle from Liberty to Glenwood. The last change is, so those were all elementary. Our only middle school change, Forest Park, is running high, and we have a fair amount of space in South End. This is a neighborhood we just looked at relative to Harris and Sumner. So this is along Long Hill Street over to Fort Pleasant Avenue, includes Edgeland, and it goes up to Warner Street in Forest Park. This is an area that's currently zoned to Forest Park Middle School, and we would shift it to South End Middle. And again, because there's, we recently did the renovation at Forest Park, and we're running well over the numbers that we did that renovation to accommodate. And we do have the space at South End. So that concludes, those are the proposed changes. I realized that was a lot. And then we have this link. This form is already live, and this is an opportunity for members of the public to give us feedback on any of the changes and just provide comments to us on the changes. I will say this is something we're doing relatively quickly, because obviously if we're telling a child they're going to a different school next year than they went to this year, we want to get that out as soon as possible.
Any questions, Paul?
No. Any questions or comments?
Yes, may I ask a question? And you may have said this earlier, Paul. And so is the main reason that we're doing this is to reduce crowding?
Yes.
So I guess my concern is a couple things. One is, I know that it's for some people, it's great to have your child go to school closer to home, but for others, the timing around busing, around using or utilizing a bus, allows for some flexibility around work, start time, and things of that nature. And we oftentimes get calls from parents, especially at the elementary level, about their child having to walk to school because they don't meet the 2-mile cutoff. So I guess I'm just wondering what we're going to do, because even though there was only one child in that area that Barbara pointed out, there was 37 and 42. And I'm sure there's a large enough number that some folks, depending upon how old their children are and what grades they're in, are going to have an issue with now no longer having access to busing.
You know,
And also to that point, if how it's going to affect attendance too.
some of the kids in these changes are on a bus presently and are actually staying on a bus. Some of them are presently walkers and would potentially be bused, and others would be on a bus but walking to a school that's actually not to their home. So we made the adjustment, but we only have so much space in the schools, and we have to get the class numbers so they're appropriate at the schools, and that's what we're trying to do here. But we'll certainly work with the families as best we can. Elementary is 1.5 miles and a safe walk path. So middle school's 2 miles and a safe walk path. So we'll be looking at all those things.
I mean, one thing I'll point out with Kensington Avenue School, Bloomfield and Kensington, that's where the school sits. And I think we had a 20 or something, or 30 going to White Street. So I mean, you're literally, the school is right there. Kensington, it's Kensington Ave here, and it's Bloomfield Street there.
And they were walkers both ways. They were walking to White, now they'll be walking to Kensington. So
I get that example. I think that makes a lot of sense, because I see where Kensington sits. I'm thinking of, I think it was Bowles was going to move to Bradley or
to DeBerry.
To DeBerry.
But that would still be a bus as well.
It would still be a bus.
Yeah, that's too far. In fact, I didn't do a good job explaining. Most of these changes, walkers are staying walkers or buses. When I mentioned transportation, I was mostly trying to make sure I emphasized that we weren't adding buses. Most of these walkers stay walkers, bus riders stay bus riders for most of these. I mean, I could go back through them, but my recollection is nearly all, if not all, that's the case.
And the last question that I have, and I don't know if we have this, Superintendent or Paul, but I know there's a lot of conversation around boundary and neighborhood schools, and I know that we're a district that is majority minority or majority students of color. When we change or make these boundary changes, are there going to be schools that experience a significant shift in demographics?
It's certainly something we could look at. What I would say is, because the percentage of our student population, and the diversity of our student population as it stands today, and in pretty much in every school, I think two things. You wouldn't see a dramatic shift in any of these schools for two reasons, really, because all of our schools are very diverse at this point, but also because as a percentage of the total population at any one school, these are still pretty small.
And I'm sorry, and maybe I should have clarified, outside of race or ethnicity, I think that one of the things that sometimes people think or feel is that when schools are located in a different area or neighborhood, they're sometimes perceived to be better schools. schools, right? So you have parents who are like, oh no, I don't want my kid to not go to Harris or to go to Brunton, and then shift them somewhere downtown, and then they feel like their kid is not getting the best school. I mean, that's actually, it might be a fallacy, but it's something that people think about and contend with. And I think we see it a lot at the high school level when we have, everyone clamoring to go to, 2 particular high schools in the city.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd have to think more about how to analyze that. I mean, I think, historically we have had attendance zones. I mean, this goes back a ways, but attendance zones that were more spread out across the city so that there were more buses going, so that there was more, I guess, mixing across neighborhoods in terms of, kids coming from different neighborhoods. I think over time, we've tried to get kids back closer to neighborhood schools where possible, but I understand what you're saying. I mean, that does have other side effects.
Well, I wanted to kind of piggyback on that question and thinking about, I know that we put here that if students are in 5th or 8th grade, that they be grandfathered in, but I'd be concerned even for kids who are out of school for multiple years, even if they're not in 5th or 8th grade, especially elementary school. I get a lot when parents will say, well, my kid has now been at the school for 3 years, and now I'm concerned that my child is going to have to move to XYZ place because now the boundary has changed. And I get if we at least give them an option and say, hey, if you want to keep your kid here, then you're responsible to get your kid there, transport. I understand that option. I just don't like forcing families who have been at a school for a number of years now to say, oh, now you've built this great rapport with this school and this administration and these teachers, and now maybe you had a kid that went to this teacher that you thought now your next kid is going to be able to go to, but now they can't because your kid is not in 5th grade or 8th grade, and what that might do for, thinking about the longevity of those relationships that we've worked so hard to build at those schools for those families. And it's enough to get families to trust the schools. And so I think that in most cases you may have that, families move and it doesn't bother them at all. But in some cases you may have with families who really have really close relationships with the schools where they don't want to leave because they just feel that that's really been a vital part of their child's success at that school. And so I would hope that we have some type of leniency around that guideline where we're requiring folks to just up and leave, especially if there's been some type of stability there for that child and that family. I don't know what I don't know what the response might be, but it just concerns me that could happen in some cases where it could really be a big deal for kids if we have to tear them out of a school setting that they've finally grown accustomed to.
I think we've tried we try to do this as little as possible, obviously, and we try to make the changes as small as possible because we recognize the disruption. I think the problem is the reason we've historically constrained the grandfathering to the final grade is if the whole point is about overcrowding. And so if we grandfathered all the current students, we'd said like take an elementary school, if we grandfathered all the rising 1st through 5th graders, we would only have addressed the overcrowding in kindergarten, but not the other 5 grades. And it would take 3 or 4 years. And we do have some, certainly at the elementary level, we have some contractual language around class size that we have to pay attention to.
Hey, Mayor, could I say something briefly?
Work through them. So we try to work through those issues, and we do grandfathering of the exit grades. But we've grandfathered some early ones where there's some specific issues. But the crowding is a significant issue, and people move within neighborhoods, and when you have a fixed plan, you have to make the adjustments so that the class sizes are right for the kids also, because there's only so much space in the buildings.
Attorney Murphy?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. As I recall, I know that the changes are fairly small with respect to our overall population, but this used to be a busing issue, right? Didn't the bus companies sort of drive this issue in the past, routes and that kind of thing? This doesn't have to do with busing at all?
This doesn't really change busing much. This was more about the crowding in the schools. When the plan was originally developed, We had 75% of our elementary kids on buses, and it was unaffordable and had gone out of control. And it was a matter of trying to assign more kids to neighborhood schools so that the parents would have the connection to the school, but also to minimize the busing through the city. This is more about the space issues in the schools and adjusting to that. This isn't changing pulling many buses off or putting more buses on them.
So just to get back to Ms. Hurst and Ms. Naylor's point, so the parents and the families, we've identified that they are potentially going to be transferred from one school to another. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Yeah, but are they aware of that? Is there any input from the parents or the families on that? I mean, did we say to them, or the school? Okay.
The letters went out to letters went out to them this week, and the letters included a link to a form. We normally would have had a community meeting at the schools to let people know, but we went with
right
mailing letters, and then there's an online form where they can give us their input.
Okay. I mean, it's a tough one. I mean, this is always a tough one because, it is very sensitive when families are told they have to move from one school to another. And I'm assuming there are some families that might actually want to do it. And, if it was done on a voluntary basis, it would be the easiest thing. But, I mean, it's not Nebraska. I mean, we're not busing kids, hundreds of miles. I mean, some of the neighborhoods that, we're talking about are actually, fairly close, but, this is always a tough one.
So it can be a point of contention. I think that what the superintendent and what Mr. Foster put forward, there weren't really big numbers, but the point's well taken by Ms. Hurst and Ms. Naylor, and maybe, it wasn't a large number, but maybe if there is one or two or extenuating circumstances that can be looked at.
We work through those, and we'll have Pace working on those. I think we'll continue to listen to parents on it. Some will maybe like it, others not so much, and we'll work with the grandfathering process as we have.
I think Barbara pointed, there was one where there was just one, and I think the highest I saw was 32.
Yeah. These are small tweaks, but when you take a class, if the average class is 25, now all of a sudden it's 29. Now you're outside the contractual limits and really outside best educational processes also. So when you have a confined boundary, you have to adjust the boundaries occasionally so you get the numbers right for the school for appropriate education. So we'll work with the families on it as we have in the past, and we'll get the input on it.
Any other questions or comments? Okay,
thank you, guys.
So are we voting on this tonight?
No. This is just informational, Barbara.
Okay, all right, good. So can we get like a consensus of what parents are saying in the future?
Yeah. Information into Paul, and we'll be able to get that to you.
Okay.
Could we also, Superintendent, when you do the community meetings, will it be a link that would be shared with us? So if we wanted to join, we could?
Community meetings, but this time it's going to be virtually to us.
I'm sorry, I missed what you said. What was that?
Normally we do community meetings like Paul said, but this time we've communicated by mail and are asking the parents to send us the feedback back.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's our normal process, like Paul said, but we can't do it this time. But there is a for feedback.
And so in addition to sending it by mail, will it be a part of like the social media communication that Azelle does?
We'll communicate it many ways, and we'll also.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hurst. Any other questions or comments on this issue? Okay, hearing none, thank you. We'll move the reports of standing committees, student relation, parent concerns, Ms. Gresham.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Gresham. Buildings and Maintenance Committee, Mr. Collins, Vice Chair Collins.
We handled the two issues under.
Thank you. Legislative Contracts Committee, Ms. Perez is under the weather. We hope you're feeling better. D is Curriculums Program Committee, Ms. Hurst.
Yes, Your Honor. We actually addressed both items that came before the Curriculums and Program Committee, the grading policy and the credit or the course that's going to be offered at SciTech.
Budget and Finance Committee, Vice Chair Collins?
Well, we all were at the hearing last night, or some of us were. Just a reminder, the budget's completed at this point, that there will be about a 15-minute Budget and Finance meeting just prior to next Thursday's meeting, which is the meeting where we vote on the budget. So we can take a formal vote from Budget and Finance Subcommittee to give it to the full.
Any questions? Vice Chair Collins? Okay, thank you. Vocational Education Committee, I know Attorney Murphy told me dissertation.
No report, Mayor. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Technology Committee, Ms. Naylor?
No report, sir.
I'm glad you're feeling better too.
Thank you.
School Safety Committee, Ms. Gresham?
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Ms. Gresham. Special Subcommittee Staff Demographics, again, that's Ms. Perez, and she's under the weather. We hope you're feeling better. We'll now move to, we have the report of the student representative, school committee, Benny Najetz, Benny Havan, Conservatory of the Arts. And if you're watching, Benny, we know you're here in spirit, so we'll move on to report of Superintendent Warwick.
Well, we talked about conservatory. So one of my pieces is conservatory was just given a grant of $284,675 for Innovation Pathway, led by Principal Kelly, Lydia Martinez, and others on the college and career readiness piece, really in partnership with Mass Hire Stick. So that was a nice grant that came through. We'll be getting more information on that for the Conservatory of the Arts. Another piece, and there's a piece we sent out to folks on this, but on our school nurses as part of the city team, our school nurses have helped the health commissioner with contact tracing. Very appreciative. A nice agreement we did with the union on that, so they can help keep everyone in the city safe working on that. We have another article I sent out to you. Our fine arts, our foreign language director has been working for years on our advanced placement work with Mass Insight for Education, and just received a statewide award on that. And Springfield's been the Mike Contaposis Award, and Mike actually worked in Boston, but was the one who worked with us, working with Mass Insight to set up that whole initiative, increasing AP placement. But during this time frame, when Ann Ferrier has led this, Springfield went where we have the highest percentage of minority students taking AP courses of anyone in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So Ann got a nice recognition on this, and the system has been recognized for that. Let's see, our meals program, the mayor talked about earlier. We have 17 sites. We're doing breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a snack every day. And on Fridays, we actually give families all for the weekend, for Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So as of today, we've distributed 435,066 meals. Shorter than this, the mayor said will be very, very close to 500,000. So that's gone very well. My team and I have been working very closely with the high school principals on graduation, looking at options for graduation. We've been getting some feedback from multiple elements, taking a look at that, and taking a look at what other people are doing across the Commonwealth, given the time frame. And we're exploring a lot of options. One we're leaning to right now with a lot of positives. And one big positive is we have Focus Springfield and Brendan Holland to help us, is a virtual graduation that we can air on Focus Springfield and stream live and actually have all our speeches, our valedictorian, salutatorian, class president, our other speeches, a whole assembly, show everyone's picture and call their names, and we could have it recorded for posterity. And not only have it on Focus Springfield, Channel 15, for people to see who live in the city, but stream it out so people who don't live in the city can actually relatives can see it. So we're working on that. We're going to get you more information as we get closer, but we're leaning towards that option right now. So we'll have something in place in early June. I think it's really important that kids have some kind of closure in June and some kind of ceremony. We think that's our best option right now. We're also working with the principals, should things improve in August, or some kind of program back at the school where maybe the kids come in with caps and gowns and actually have some kind of senior celebration, and things like that. So we're taking a look at our options, trying to make it the best we can. We're also thinking if we can get the caps and gowns in on time, we could also, in addition to showing their pictures, we could actually have them stream out their pictures in their cap and gown, maybe with their families. So we're trying to come up with the best celebration we can do that keeps everyone's safety in mind, and taking a look at what's going on throughout the Commonwealth. So we have a team working on it, and our 8 high schools have agreed we're all going to do the same thing. So there's a fairness element to that, and that we'll all agree on how we're going to move it forward. So we'll be getting you more information on that as we work through.
I wanted to thank the superintendent, because if you're following the CDC guidelines, or you're following other guidelines that are being put forward, second phase type things, 50 or more people, sort of could take you potentially out to June, July, and the third phase takes you into August. And you're starting to see now a lot of major events, which would include for us in Springfield, but major events throughout the nation and the world are being postponed until next year. So, listen, I hope things clear up quickly and we can do something later in the summer. But I think I know how the committee feels, but I think superintendents are, you got to bring some type of closure celebration on and recognize you that you made it. So
we have to do something substantial, and then with the option that maybe in August we'll be able to do something in addition to that each school can plan. We've been working very, very closely with our director of nursing and with Helen, public health, just to make sure we're also doing something that's safe for our students and their families. And this seems to be what a lot of other school districts in the Commonwealth are thinking of right now also. So again, more work and more information to come on that, but we've been doing a lot of work.
And just the last, on this subject, I know there was a May 18th date. Some things might happen, some things might not. We're already working on the city side, as Dan is on the school side, on how a gradual phase in reopening occurs, which is going to be totally different. Totally different. City side. And on the school side, it could be immensely different. So that's in the works too, whether sometime in the near future or not. So it's going to be the new normalcy. I think we talked about it earlier between executive session and this meeting. Without a vaccine, which is hopefully in the near future, people will never feel that comfortable. Sorry,
that concludes my report, Mayor. Thank you.
any questions or comments, superintendent's report?
I would just say I'm so glad that we're going to do something. I think it's so important that we do something. So that really makes me happy to hear that. I also think it would be really helpful. I know you guys had one on Monday and I couldn't be a part of it. If we could have a practice run as to how that would look for us who might have to do speeches. But I do think I think it's really important that we do something. So I'm glad to hear that. And like the mayor just said, there's lots of events that are being postponed, but there are also some that have gone virtual, right? I was forced to watch the football draft. So I see how that has gone virtual. Or went remote. So I'm happy about that. And I think that the only thing that I would think about is just making sure that families know that it's going to be streamed and people are going to be able to watch it from their home so that they don't gather.
No,
So, but I'm glad that we're going to do something.
and the Zells keep job so far with the communication, but we're gonna blast it every way we can, so families know. And we're gonna keep them on the same schedule, televised exactly according to the same schedule that they were originally gonna be held, so it'll be one an evening. And we can pre-record the speeches with Brendan, so that they'll do this, but they'll all be pre-recorded, so that, and we'll do the valedictorian, salutatorian, class president, principal, you know, the mayor, myself, the school committee member as for the graduations like we always do. So that it'll be a similar ceremony, albeit virtual.
Hey, these two things, did you have better picks than Justin?
We were just worried about the Dolphins.
So they did okay. They did a lot better than Patriots.
And the other thing, it's amazing, you know, at Focus Springfield, Pat Sullivan did a great job. My office squad you have here in the school department. We did the police graduation today. And the logistics, can we do this? We had to break it up, don't get me wrong, but it ran smoothly. It ran smoothly, and that was done virtually. And it was video streaming, so nothing's impossible. But I'm glad that the school committee members and the superintendent Ward that we need. Everybody's going, why don't you, let's wait until the end of summer. We don't know, and I hope I'm wrong. We don't know what's going to happen. And I think that we have to celebrate it, reward them, bring some positive closure. So that's good.
But the principals are also planning something for August, should we be able to carry it off for the kids. Hopefully we have the best of both worlds.
May I ask a question? Have you heard anything around the 5th or 8th grade graduations? I have children that are in 5th and 8th grade, and they've been pressing me to make that ask. What are we gonna do about them stepping up? I said, I don't know. I haven't heard anything yet. But
we haven't finished anything yet, but where you have the CSOs working with the principals to see what they think they can do, that would be appropriate for each school. So we have done that as well. Yeah.
Well, Tony, when I was
because these 5th graders might not be able to get together again.
Yeah.
Sometimes we have stepping up ceremonies in 5th or sometimes in 8th, but we have the CSOs now working with principals to see what can be done, but sometimes those kids might not see some of their classmates again because they don't all go to the same school. So we're working on that one, Tony.
we didn't do that at White Street or Washington or Kylie Junior High School. And you were gone. That was it. You know, good point. Tony.
So we're going to try to pull something off with that as well, Tony. We're working on it.
okay, thank you.
I mean, I had an award ceremony at Flag.
Eddie, where'd you get that cool hat, man?
Okay.
I'm just kind of spitballing here, but I did see part of that graduation. It was done in the tent at the carriage house?
We had the Forest Park, the Barney House, assembled there, socially distancing into the tent. It worked out well. We had to do 2 phases. We opened up at 10 o'clock. We did one, we split up. We had Springfield, which was a really tremendous, very diverse mosaic class of the city. And we helped out the Chicopee, West Side, a few, UMass, Springfield College. So we did at 10 o'clock. And then we did 11:30. Split them up and all socially distancing, masks. Every one of us had masks on.
And the reason I saw that setting, I'm assuming that Steve Carey or somebody was there with
Half that. And I had my Billy Baker, our crew there.
Something for the committee to think about, rather than picking one person to speak at each graduation where you'd have to go down and tape either to Focus Springfield or someplace. If maybe we could get Steve with a camera at that same setting, everybody take between 5 and 20 seconds and do it so that we all say something to every high school. But you can't get up there and have everybody do 3 minutes. You'd have to limit it. But that way we'd all be able to say, because if we tape it once, it can be shown to all the schools. Think about that and let me know what you think of that suggestion, or if you have other suggestions.
That's a good idea because I
could
won't
be
be
a-
able to
yeah.
do my call and response this year because nobody won't be able to respond to me.
Right. It could also be a really nice video. I mean, I'm sure Focus always does a really good job, but that would be a really good idea. And if you did it to some music or something that was upbeat, I think it would be nice. And again, if, like the superintendent said, if it's recorded, people can have it for, a long time.
And you can dance into Rocky.
No.
No TikToks, no TikToks.
I have no rhythm, just so you know.
I have an unrelated question.
Sure, go ahead.
And I don't think it needs to be a discussion for tonight, but it's just something that's pressing. And so it's really thinking about the MCAS, and I know that we've gotten waivers and all that stuff for this year, but just thinking about for next year, again, my own selfish questioning because I have a 10th grader who wasn't able to take the MCAS this year. I know that we do a lot of, programming in 10th grade to really make sure that students are prepared and able to pass the MCAS in 10th grade. Are we going to be thinking about for next year, and I'm sure we don't know yet how they're going to do it because they haven't discussed it yet at the state level, but my guess is that they will likely have the students who should have took it for 10th grade take it next year or forego it. And I just wonder, if we're starting to already think about how we're going to prepare students next year if they were not able to take it in 10th grade and then now have to take it in 11th grade.
So the state has sent some things out recently on it, and what it looks like they're talking about is, should we come back in the fall, the 10th graders will take the test in the fall.
Okay.
So that'll be in 11th grade, but taking the 10th grade test. And for students who were advanced in the grades, if they were in 12th grade, they've given us some accommodations on the whole competency determination piece. So we'll be getting you more information on that as it comes. But as it stands now, it looks like they'll take it in 11th grade in the fall, and we'll be looking to try to do appropriate curricular reviews.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All good questions. Very good questions. We're still on the superintendent's report. Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to unfinished business. Hearing none, we'll move to new business. Is there a motion on the floor to adjourn? So moved. Motion by Vice Chair Collins, or second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Naylor. Roll call vote is required. Madam?
Mrs. Hurst?
Yes.
Attorney Murphy?
Yes.
Ms. Naylor?
Yes.
Ms. Gresham?
Yes.
Ms. Perez, absent. Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mayor Sarno?
Yes, voice of sufficient votes. This matter passes. Thank you for watching and good evening.
Thank you, everyone.